I don't want to be strong like man who look pretty. I want to be strong like bitch that fight bears in the forest.
Welcome to another episode of Bitch vs. Bear with your hosts, me, Amber, my bestie, Sydney. Woohoo! We are co-owners of Shield Maiden Training Co., and this is a show where we bitch, laugh, and chat about all things fitness and wellness related to women and the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yep.
All the letters.
Yes, all of them. We are inclusive.
Yes. Unless you're an asshole.
Yeah.
Then we don't include you.
Yeah, that's different.
All right, what are we doing this week?
Boo bans, specifically trans bans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's dive into that.
All
This is going to be a little rage-inducing.
So, the issue of banning transgender athletes from participating in sports that align with their gender identity has really become a significant and contentious topic across the United States.
Shocker.
As of the year 2024, at least 20 states have enacted laws prohibiting transgender women and girls from competing in female sports teams, citing concerns about fairness and competitive balance.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to read my paragraph.
Yeah, just dive in.
Just
dive in.
I'm not even going to try to comment. The history of transgender athletes in sports is a narrative of gradual inclusion marked by significant milestones and ongoing controversies. One of the earliest and most notable cases of a transgender athlete is Renee Richards, a professional tennis player. After transitioning in 1975, Richards faced legal battles when the United States Tennis Association barred her from competing in the U.S. Open. Bastards.
Yep.
In 1977, the New York Supreme Court ruled in her favor. Great. Allowing her to compete as a woman.
Right?
I mean,
So,
obviously, she's a woman.
she is a woman.
What the fuck else would she compete as? A monkey?
They're pretty intelligent. I would like to see that sports. I would like to see them playing tennis. That would be kind of cool.
Okay. Anyways.
But this whole narrative that transgender folks are it's new and people haven't been transgender and it's the liberal left and all of these things making people we know that's not true. We've done topics and episodes on this, but also this idea of transgender folks competing in sports has been around for decades. So it's not new. It's the base level of that. In 2003, the IOC established guidelines allowing transgender athletes to compete in the Olympics. So
The IOC.
International Olympic Committee.
Okay.
Provided that those athletes had undergone gender reassignment surgery, legal recognition of their gender, so it had been changed on birth certificate or ID, passport, that kind of stuff, and at least 2 years of hormone therapy. This policy was a significant step towards inclusion on the global stage. The IOC revised its guidelines in 2015, removing the requirement for surgery.
Okay.
Transgender women were required to demonstrate that their testosterone levels had been below a certain level for at least a year before competition. This change acknowledged the importance of hormone levels in maintaining a competitive fairness, which as athletes, we do know that those do play a part, and it was a way to compromise. The IOC was looking at ways to acknowledge the concerns that female-born and identifying athletes had about folks who had made a transition and now identified that way, knowing that women are not smaller men.
Right.
Our bodies are not smaller men's bodies.
Contrary to what science.
So those athletes have rightful concerns, and this was the way to compromise and say, okay, the folks who have transitioned and now identify this way, we need you no longer have to have surgery, but you do have to have certain hormone levels be below a certain amount for at least a year of competition to help create that fairness.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate the willingness to compromise and find a solution.
Yes.
And I understand the hormone thing because, like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Requiring surgery seems ridiculous. Like, who is the designated genital checker? Like,
What
I mean-
Adidas tracksuit did they have to wear? That's my question. How did you identify them? How were they marked so that you knew that that was their job? This is, yep. Things we think about.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, it just, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyways, I think the hormone level thing makes at least scientific sense because we know that there are hormone differences.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense. In April of 2024, the NAIA, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, announced a policy that all but banned transgender athletes from competing in women's sports at its 241, mostly small colleges across the country. Okay, but why is it only women's sports? Is that coming up?
No, I mean, it's a fair question. So,
Like,
that
I feel like
is-
there's all this talk around women's sports. Like, are they not banning transgender men from participating in men's sports?
No, again, because it comes back to at least my understanding is that the female athletes recognize that our bodies are not small men's bodies.
Right.
So there are advantages, physical advantages as a male competing against a female. We know our advantages, but generally speaking, bigger muscle mass, those kinds of things, to give an advantage. And so the thought process being that it only affects people going one way, not the other.
Of fucking course.
So adding testosterone and things like you're not going to get to the same level. That's the kind of why it goes this way, is because
estrogen couldn't possibly enhance anything.
Yeah, right.
Or make anything better.
Except our pain tolerance.
See back to one of our other other episodes about women being able to last longer
Yeah.
and have better endurance.
Yep.
Anyways, okay. According to the transgender participation policy, all athletes may participate in NAIA-sponsored male sports, but only athletes whose biological sex assigned at birth is female and have not begun hormone therapy will be allowed to participate in women's sports. Yeah, I should have just finished the paragraph before I threw hands. Because now I can throw hands.
Now you can throw hands. So the rulings and the arguments of this are focused on athletes whose biological sex was not assigned female at birth. The key argument around these concerns of fairness and competitive balance, really it's advocating a trans ban. That's really what it is. And argue that male to female transgender athletes may retain physical advantages from male puberty, such as greater muscle mass, bone density, and cardiovascular capacity, even after their transition. They claim these advantages can provide an unfair competitive edge over cisgendered female athletes. We found this from Outsports, which is great. And as I really nicely wrote, we view this as an overly simplistic argument, and here's why.
Great. Sid, tell us why.
Okay.
What's our first point?
1. Hormone replacement therapy, HRT, significantly alters the physiology of transgender women. So estrogen and testosterone blockers lead to a reduction in muscle mass, bone density, and changes in body fat distribution over time. So studies have shown that after 1 year of HRT, transgender women's muscle mass and strength decrease considerably.
Rude.
Bringing them closer to the average levels seen in cisgender women.
Still rude. Like, if you worked hard for those muscles, it sucks.
But again, on the argument side is they're arguing that they're going to retain these when actually, if you are on hormone replacement therapy, you're not.
Right.
You're not likely to retain at that same level.
All right. Fair enough. All right. So research on athletic performance indicates that transgender women do not retain a significant competitive advantage over cisgender women after undergoing HRT. A study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that trans women who had been on HRT for at least 1 year had no significant advantage in athletic performance over cisgender women.
Yeah. And real-world data from actual competitions show that transgender women do not dominate women's sports. For instance, transgender athletes are not consistently winning championships at elite levels, which suggests that the competitive edge claimed by proponents of bans may not be a substantial argument.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like,
we don't hear about, like, oh, this person transit and they're just wiping the floor.
Right. I
So
mean, that would make news.
Yeah.
I have not heard that news.
We'd hear that. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're hearing. And
So,
that's
like,
not what
what are they
studies
complaining
suggesting.
about? I know what they're complaining about. So the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, and other sports governing bodies have established guidelines that allow transgender women to compete in women's categories, provided they maintain their testosterone levels below a certain threshold,
For at
typically
least
10 something or others, for at least 12 months. I don't know what that stands for. These policies are based on scientific evidence suggesting that reduced testosterone levels mitigate previous male physiological advantages. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're bringing it to the same hormone levels as the other people you're competing with. What's the fucking issue?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So then there's so that is one argument that is made. There
Okay.
are others.
of course there are.
So one of the other big ones that you hear quite frequently is the argument for protection of women's sports on the foundation that allowing transgender women to compete in women's categories could roll back the progress made in women's sports by introducing competitors who they argue have not faced the same systematic barriers as cisgender women. I know. Hold it together, Amber. However, this argument demonstrates a misunderstanding of systemic barriers on transgender women. So, transgender women often face significant systemic barriers, including discrimination, social stigma, and barriers to accessing healthcare and support systems.
Oh my God.
The research indicates that transgender individuals frequently experience higher rates of mental health issues, harassment, and exclusion, all of which can be significant barriers to success in sports. So the argument that a transgender woman is somehow more advantaged than a cisgender woman is absurd to me.
What? I almost flipped the damn table. Like, what the hell?
That would have made for a great YouTube video. Just Amber,
Yeah,
love
we
it.
don't have enough. We need Patreon before we can start destroying equipment
and furniture. We actually renamed the podcast and the YouTube channel, and it's just like WWE gay style, and it's just like all of the
my God.
enragements.
What? How? Like, yes, as a cisgender woman, I am at disadvantages in various arenas of the world. But I would never, ever claim to be more disadvantaged or have more barriers in place than a trans woman. I'm sorry, what?
Yep.
What?
That's the other argument.
What?
That's why we're saying Boooo Bans.
That is just unfathomable logic to me. What?
It's okay. Just keep reading.
Okay. Okay. Is this one going to be bad too? Okay. The historical struggle for women's rights in sports has been about inclusion and equality, as the rest of our lives are. Many advocates argue that excluding transgender women from women's sports is contrary to these principles of inclusion and equality.
We would be those
Yeah.
people.
We're those people. The fight for women's rights in sports aimed to eliminate discrimination and promote equal opportunities for all women. All women,
All women.
which includes transgender women, because they are women. Excluding transgender athletes can be seen as a continuation of exclusionary practices rather than a protection of women's rights. Obvi. So this claim that allowing transgender women to compete in women's sports will roll back the progress made in women's sports overlooks the systemic barriers faced by transgender women. I can't even get the words out. The inclusive policies based on scientific evidence and the lack of real-world evidence showing that transgender women dominate women's sports.
The evidence supports us. Boooo
It
Bans.
always has. The evidence always supports us. But they don't want to see it.
I know.
And by they, I mostly mean cisgender white straight men. It also contradicts the broader goals of women's rights movement, which advocates for inclusion and equality of all women,
Yeah,
including transgender women, because they're women.
exactly.
Ugh.
Yeah. So clearly we have thoughts and feelings on this.
I have a lot of thoughts and feelings.
So as we wrap up today's episode on transgender sports bans, it's really crucial to reflect on the complexities and the nuances of the issue. The debate over inclusion of transgender athletes in sports is not just about fairness and competitive balance. It's about the fundamental values of equality, inclusion, and human rights.
Yes. Yes. Like, you're not protecting us. You're not protecting women. Have you even asked any women? I don't know who I'm talking to because people who are listening to this already know this.
Some women do feel this way. And you know, like, having played a lot of sports growing up, I can see the initial, especially at levels where HRT, because of other things, aren't being taken. But the whole concept has to be around, like, it really is when puberty hits. And so there is this finite time when this argument could be made that there is a competitive advantage, because right now so many states have rolled back access to care, and so, like, that presents a whole nother level and barrier of, like,
Right.
well, now these young athletes at 16 have undergone puberty, identify this way, but don't have access to
Gender affirming care.
And so that's what promotes that actual argument. That's the only way that argument stands.
Yeah. So guess what? If you give people health care, this isn't an issue.
Exactly.
They can do their hormone replacement therapy. Everything's fine. Ugh. Okay, I'll read my last paragraph.
It's really just a reiteration of all the things we've already said.
All the things I'm so angry about.
Yeah.
Okay. Transgender athletes, particularly transgender women, face significant challenges and discrimination. The scientific community has shown that with proper hormone therapy, transgender women do not hold the competitive advantage often cited by supporters of these bans. Moreover, real-world evidence does not support the claim that transgender women are dominating women's sports in a way that undermines the progress made by cisgender women.
Yep.
It's evidence, friends.
It's essential to consider the broader context of these policies and their impact on all athletes. Inclusivity in sports fosters a more diverse and supportive environment, reflecting the true spirit of competition and sportsmanship.
Yes.
That's really... That's it.
I don't understand how that's not like...
So, Boooo Bans.
Boo!
Boo! All right. That's a wrap. We're just...
Go stew for a little while.
So, Whether you're lifting weights or lifting each other up, let's keep breaking barriers, building strength, and embracing our rainbow of resilience, especially during Pride Month.
Yes.
Until next time, stay fierce and stay fabulous.
Woo.